All right, let's move on to the FBI and the Oath Keepers. Per the New York Times, it's the development, or actually per NBC News, a federal jury in Washington on Tuesday found Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes and Kelly Meggs, another member of the far-right organization, guilty of seditious conspiracy in connection with the January 6 attack on the Capitol, a victory for the government in a case that involved a rarely used Civil War-era statute. And that Civil War-era statute is seditious conspiracy, was used in this case, obviously, successfully. 3 other members of the group were on trial. Jessica Watkins, Kenneth Harrelson, Thomas Caldwell, all found not guilty on the charge of seditious conspiracy, but they were all 5 found guilty of obstruction and aiding and abetting for what happened on January 6th. And then there's another trial that's starting early this month in December of 4 other Oath Keepers who were charged in conjunction with Rhodes. This comes on the heels of what we learned last week, that an FBI informant named Greg McWhirter, who was an Oath Keepers vice president, had been secretly reporting to the FBI about the Oath Keepers' activities. This is per the New York Times again. In the weeks and months leading up to the Capitol attack, he was called to testify in this trial as a defense witness, but had a heart attack on the plane on the way. And it was just, he can't testify anymore. He was supposed to testify as a witness for Rhodes. And the New York Times wrote, that's an unusual move that suggests Mr. Rhodes' lawyers believe he has information that could have helped Rhodes' case. But what the lawyer ended up saying, he had been taken off a plane when he was traveling to Washington to testify after having a heart attack.
Yeah, you just can't make that stuff up. It's like you're writing the script for people to be, to believe everything about everything when stuff like that happens. But so it seemed like what the verdict was saying was that they did not believe, the jury did not believe that the specific act of sacking the Capitol was drawn up and executed kind of A to Z. But that when that opportunity arose, they tactically maneuvered their way into a situation where they could execute on that. And we're waiting for the word from Trump to arm themselves and to go further than that. And his argument was, hey, I was just supporting the president, and the president never told me to arm up, and so we backed down. Come on.
One thing that was very bad for their case is that they had a stockpile of weapons in Virginia immediately. I mean, and there were messages that were revealed as part of the case where they were talking about like very violent things happening to Nancy Pelosi, basically saying, you know, this is we're in
Civil War, it's gonna be
revolution.
bloody.
We're in revolutionary times, similar to what our founding fathers were in. And you know, the president needs to know that we're ready to like fight. All that kind of stuff. Now, McWhirter would have been an extremely interesting witness in this case because there's the open question when we learned also this month that the FBI had as many as 8 informants, per the New York Times, inside the Proud Boys in the months before January 6th, as many as 8. And so that's where I'm interested to know. My impression, reporting on it as it was happening, is that it really was this like awful mob mentality that just snowballed out of control because bad actors were whipping people into a frenzy. The question of whether this was like actually that anybody had sat aside and architected it, I think McWhirter would have known because he would have been relaying that information to the FBI. So I would love to know what the FBI knew. We also learned this week that people who have been working for Liz Cheney on the Select Committee, looking into January 6th, this was reported in like CNN, are upset because she has scuttled, and she's her spokesperson, said that the reports of this were correct, information about law enforcement failures on January 6th.
Yeah, they declined to look at that.
And that's where it's like, you're telling me a guy who might be testifying against the FBI, an FBI informant who might have been testifying against the FBI, has a heart attack on his plane on the way to testify. It's very strange, obviously, but the broader point is, that's where those informants, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, I would be really curious what they knew, because I also think it suggests that this was a case of mob mentality that got wildly out of control. It doesn't say, as this verdict found, it doesn't mean that people weren't drawing up some plans, but a plan to intentionally sack the Capitol. I mean, they may have had very violent, they had a stockpile of weapons in Virginia. They may have had very violent plans, contingency plans, whatever it was, intentions, whatever it was, but specifically to sack the Capitol and to stop the vote. I don't think that was ever the clear design of what they were going to do on January 6th, but I do think a lot of them whipped the crowd into a frenzy when they realized it was attainable because of law enforcement failures. When you see them breaking past the small guards, the small number of guards that they had, throwing that female Capitol police officer to the ground where she cracks her head on the back of the steps, they started to feel really emboldened.
Yeah, you're right. So, if they did have detailed, drawn-up plans for which doors they're going to hit and how they're going to actually get into the Capitol, and they still came out with that tiny amount of Capitol Police protection, then that in itself is extraordinarily scandalous. So that would be why, either they're going to people like Cheney aren't going to look into that and aren't going to find the evidence of that, or more likely, I think people like Rhodes just didn't think it was reasonable to expect that even thousands of people were going to be able to break through the Capitol, because they've been to protests in Washington, D.C. There's phalanx after phalanx of armed riot police. Who you're not going to get through with a bunch of unarmed protesters.
It's no easy feat, and that's.
But apparently, nobody at the FBI or Capitol Police was checking Facebook or Twitter or Parler or anything else.
And we've talked to people who've done some reporting over at The Intercept about what happened in the Gretchen Whitmer case. What we know is that the FBI informant was involved in the organization of the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, and The Intercept's reporting on all of those cases in years past where it was happening to Muslims, and the years after 9/11. It's an echo of that, and that's not to say the FBI organized January 6th. There's an open question as to what the FBI knew was going to happen on January 6th and whether law enforcement should have been much better prepared for what was going to happen on January 6th, because McWhirter was the vice president of the Oath Keepers. If the Oath Keepers had a specific plan to do this, he would have known. And if they didn't, he would have known, and thus the FBI likely would have known. So it's just a really, really messed up set of circumstances. And of course, this is all being reported in the New York Times now, but if you had said it before the New York Times touched it in the last several months, you were a conspiracy theorist. And as the details have emerged, it really looks like there was just a colossal failure of law enforcement.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.